locked into the groove. Jonathan.
Hello everyone. Hello, I'm Jonathan, and what am I here for? Yes, I'm going to tell you some fun things about the beginnings of recorded sound, the worst, most frightening Christmas present ever made, and the very earliest recorded swear word, along with one of my favourite recordings. Now, what you're seeing is a clip from a 1940 movie called Edison the Man, starring Spencer Tracy as Edison, and this is a dramatisation of the creation of the phonograph in 1877, so the granddaddy of all records, all recorded sound. And what this leaves out is what was going on in 1877. So Edison and his crack team of engineers in Menlo Park, New Jersey, had been given quite a lot of money to come up with a answer to the telephone, a non-infringing answer to the telephone, which had been invented the year before by Alexander Graham Bell. And the story goes that Edison was holding the mouthpiece of a telephone and just sort of singing and shouting into it and feeling the way the diaphragm vibrated against the palm of his hand. And he thought, if I put a little spike on that diaphragm and then pull some kind of recording medium underneath it while speaking, then if I pull it through again, I'll get my speech back. They rigged up something that day on July 18th, 1877, that's known as a strip phonograph, and he tried it out. He went, hello, hello, while pulling this piece of paraffin paper, wax-covered paper. Hello, hello, and then when he pulled it through again, he didn't get a perfect hello, hello, but he got a recognisable sort of buzzing that sounded like a human voice. So he knew he could do it. Then, a few months later, it had morphed into this, the tin-foil phonograph, which worked. It could record and play back sound, but it sounded rather bad. It was the discovery of the age. You know, it made headlines all over the world. The Wizard of Menlo Park, as he was known, had done it again. He'd made a talking machine. But what happened afterwards is that everyone realised that tinfoil makes for a very bad record, because you could make a recording on it, but playing it more than once, twice maybe maximum, destroyed the recording, and removing the record from your record player, so to speak, almost always destroyed the recording. So the world was a place where you could make a tinfoil record, but hardly anyone ever did. And into the sort of void that was left behind, because he soon went off to make light bulbs for New York, which was far more profitable, came we're about to get to the first swear word. Anyway, look, I'm going to move on. There we go. Okay, so this is the strip phonograph, and that's what he wrote in his, the exact words that he wrote in his lab notes on that day in July 1877. As you can see, he says, I shall be able to store up and reproduce automatically at any future time the human voice perfectly. This is the room where it happened. That's Edison there in the hat. There's a phonograph there, although that's not the original. And this is Menlo Park, New Jersey, as I say. And that's the original that for very many years was actually at the Science Museum in London. It ended up there, but they sent it back. But as you can see, it's not as big as it was in the movie. Ridiculous movie. Oh, so inaccurate. And as you can see, it's got grooves ready-made, and you wrap the tinfoil around and then spoke into it, wheel the thing. There we go. Now, because it's tinfoil, the recordings don't tend to survive. There are only two contemporary tinfoils that have, and we're about to listen to this one. This is the earliest we can go. This is 1878, and this was actually recorded in St. Louis by a man who had bought one of the very early phonographs. And, well, let's listen to him. So what was going on there? He was basically doing that in front of an audience and going, he was making all this noise, getting someone to play a trumpet, and then playing it back to people, and they would go, oh, wow, isn't that amazing? But, as I say, tinfoil wasn't catching on. So, the world was a place where people could record, but hardly anyone did it. And Alexander Graham Bell, who was really pissed off that he hadn't come up with the phonograph first, because he just thought, oh, God, it's such an obvious idea, why didn't I think of it? He set up a laboratory in Washington, D.C. called the Volta Laboratory, with his beardy cousin, Chichester, and this rather charming American man called Charles Sumner Tainter, who drank lots of tea and used to sort of hug himself, apparently. Just sounds like a really nice character. Anyway, this was my favourite. So obviously you saw at the beginning, I wrote a book about this, and this was my favourite part of the story, because from about 1880 to about 1885, these gentlemen tried out almost every conceivable method of recording sound into materials that you could imagine. They made records that were cylindrical shaped, they made them disc shaped, they made a very weird early reel-to-reel tape where the tape was made out of sort of paper. They made records out of glass, metal, card, wax, and what's so cool is that because of brilliant 3D scanning technology, some scientists at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. have managed to unlock these sounds. And what was going on in Volta Lab, it was so experimental, half the time they couldn't play back the sounds. Now think about it, if you're trying to test a new way of recording sound, just seeing that sound waves are being imprinted is in of itself a successful experiment. But they couldn't play it back, but we can listen to it. And it's so weird, all the things they did. So we're about to hear them, and then listen out, they do things like, they do lots of that. They say, how's this for hi? Quite often. And of course they swear. Now this first one's not got the swear on it, but here we go. And then this really strange one. This is just a man saying barometer over and over again. There's another one which I haven't got sadly where he just says potato over and over again, which I would like to get just to complete the set. Now this is because I'm a puerile man. This is my favourite because this is the earliest recorded swear word. This is 1885. It's a very strange glass disc. I'm very pleased to say I've seen the original, which is in the Library of Congress, and the sound quality is really bad. So I'm just going to tell you what to listen out for because it's quite hard. Basically, it starts with just some words, and you realise, oh, he's saying names and a date. Then he says, oh, there's more, and there's more, how's this for hi? And then he starts doing Mary had a little lamb, blah, 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 and about halfway through, something evidently goes wrong. Maybe he had a script and wanted to use a particular word and he messed it up, or maybe he could see that the machine was about to break. Either way, he lets out an F-bomb. And so, see if you can hear it. You get the idea. What I love about that is whether it was an F-bomb or not, it's certainly the sound of human vexation, which we can all relate to. Now, after 5 years of doing all their stuff in Volta Laboratory, they eventually came back with, it was originally the phonograph, they came back with the graphophone, which looked exactly like the original phonograph, only the only thing that was different was that instead of tinfoil, they used sort of narrow card tubes covered in wax, and it worked quite well. This pissed off Edison. That's him in 78, that's him in 88, coming back into the scene with this, the perfected phonograph. It's got a battery, and these are the solid wax cylinders that he started using, and they just generally worked much better. And this leads to, I said in the beginning, I was going to play you my favourite recording, and out of all these strange early sounds, this is my favourite. You see, Edison's great cheerleader in this country was an American Civil War hero called Colonel Giroux, who I think is that sitting man there. It's just possible it could be that, but I think it's him. And he was really good at generating publicity. And in the summer of '88, there was a Handel festival going on. It was the bicentenary of Handel's birth, I guess. And he took the perfected phonograph to the press gallery at the Crystal Palace. By this point, it was in Sydenham, and recorded a choir and orchestra of about 4,000 performers playing to an audience of several thousand more. And you're about to hear an excerpt of what he recorded with all those blank cylinders. Now, this sounds terrible. It's a really, really bad recording, but the reason it's my favourite, or I love it so much, is there's just, you can hear that somewhere in its murky depths is something beautiful happening. And so for me, it's as near as we can get to time travel. There's something, I think if it had been a perfect recording, it wouldn't give me goosebumps. So it's like putting your ear to the door of that summer's day in 1888. Anyway, I'll shut up and we'll play it. He actually recorded 7 cylinders of it, and I just like that bit because you can hear a really nice chord change. But anyway, so this is 1888. Over the next couple of years, the fledgling music industry starts to take off. But one of the big problems with cylinders was that at this point there was no way of mass producing a recording. So the early stars had to, if they wanted to sell 10 copies or 100 copies of a song, they had to perform it 10 times, 100 times. Imagine going up to the Beatles and saying, "Could I have another Love Me Do, please?" Which is a strange thought, but another American, a German American named Emil Berliner, he focused on discs. He just thought, he knew from the off that if we could get it right, with discs you could make a kind of stamp of the recording and then create loads of copies from that one recording. And by a quirk of fate, his first records, disc-shaped records made publicly available anywhere in the world, were these ones made by a German toy manufacturer. And as you can see, they were made of rubber, hardened rubber. They sounded terrible. They sounded so terrible, they had to print what was being said on the back so people could figure it out. And this, as you can see, it's a hand-cranked toy, essentially. Again, I'll shut up, we'll listen to it. Most people believe this is Emil Berliner himself speaking. You can certainly hear a lovely German accent. I've heard that so many times. Anyway, so this is the start of discs, and for a while cylinders and discs sort of coexisted into the 1900s. It was like Homo sapiens and Neanderthals living alongside each other. And in fact, early cylinders, cylinders sounded better than discs, but it was just much easier to make a profit. Anyway, meanwhile, in hell, this is what I was talking about with the most frightening Christmas present ever made. Edison experimented with making this a doll, a talking doll. It's also from 1888. Would you like to hear it?
Yes.
I'm just going to gird myself for this one. Merry Christmas. So sort of, she sounds sort of sarcastic and sort of threatening all at the same time. Anyway, I really can't stop laughing about that one. Anyway, so because I basically played you nothing but really horrible sounding things, I thought I should try and play at least one nice thing. And we jumped ahead a bit to 1904. That is Nellie Melba, who was a bit of a diva, and she'd been recorded in the 1890s for some cylinders and hated the experience and vowed she would never be recorded again. But long story short, she was persuaded, but she only agreed to do it if the orchestra would come to her. So on an April morning, quite a large orchestra came to her flat in Great Cumberland Place in London, and recorded what you're about to hear. And it shows how far the technology had come in quite a short space of time. This was recorded onto a disc, not a cylinder. But just keep in mind that there's no electricity involved in this recording, other than the electricity that would have revolved the recording disc. What I mean by that, there's no microphone. The sound is only recorded by being funneled down a horn and then made to carve a little spike, to vibrate a little spike that then carved the warm wax. And it's just, I think that's kind of a mind-blowing idea. Anyway, here it is. Isn't that nice? I faded it out, but for some reason it doesn't fade out nicely. But anyway, isn't that lovely? Now, at the beginning, when I showed you that, played you that vile tinfoil recording, I said this was as far back as we could go. And that was sort of true and not true. You see, Edison was not the first to record sound. He was the first to record and play back sound. So in the late 1850s, a Parisian bookseller called Edward Leon Scott de Martinville invented something that looked like this. It's not an original, none of them survived, but he called it a phonautograph. And he had a boar's bristle that's around this, he wrapped lamp-blacked paper, and he used the boar's bristle, and he would speak into the machine, rotate that, and it would trace the sound waves into soot, essentially. And he thought that given time we could learn to sort of read the sound waves. This is why you can see this is one of his phonautograms, he called them. And as you can see, he's sort of written what he said next to the sound waves, because he hoped that we could learn to sort of read what he called a natural calligraphy. And then some American scientists in 2008 from the First Sounds Collective managed to reconstruct the recording of his, well, some of his recordings that, as I say, had never been intended to be replayed. And it led to this memorable segment on Radio 4's Today programme.
Have discovered what they think is the earliest recording of the human voice, made on a device which scratched sound waves onto paper blackened by smoke. It was made in 1860, 17 years before Thomas Edison first demonstrated the gramophone, and featured an excerpt from a French song, Au clair de la lune.
At this point, one of our co-presenters said, "Sounds like a bee in a bottle."
The award-winning screenwriter Abby Mann has died at the age of 80. He won an Academy Award in 1961 for Judgment at Nuremberg. Abby Mann also won several Emmys, including one in 1973 for a film which featured a police detective called the character on whom a long-running TV series was eventually based.
It's 10 minutes past 8.
Isn't that nice? Anyway, that's my lot. I'm done.
Oh.